On the night of Friday, April 25, 1958, a one-time civilian interpreter for the United States Army during the Korean War by the name of In Ho-oh stepped outside of the apartment complex that he shared with his uncle towards a mailbox across the street in order to mail a letter to his parents in South Korea. The 26-year-old graduate student at the University of Pennsylvania was studying political science after having graduated in 1957 at the Eastern Baptist College with a degree in philosophy. His family were devout Christians, and after having escaped the communist takeover of North Korea, had decided that he wanted to become a South Korean statesman when he finished his studies as a foreign exchange student at the University of Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, that same night, a few blocks away, about 11 teenage boys, including 15-year-old Douglas MacArthur Clark, 17-year-old Robert Williams, and another young man, Alfonso Borum, had been ejected from a local teen dance party. Conflicting reports state that they either did not have enough to pay the 65 cents per person entry fee, or that they were rejected due to the dress code. In any case, the teens were angry, and they had also been drinking. They were ready to pounce on whoever was in their way to take money for the dance party that they felt should not have denied them. Unfortunately, the 26-year-old graduate exchange student from South Korea, the young man who came from a family with strong Christian beliefs, happened to be in the way. According to an eyewitness account by 18-year-old Edward McLeod, printed in the October 1st, 1958 issue of the Philadelphia Inquirer, he witnessed the boys gathering near the spot where In Ho-oh would later be attacked, drinking and seemingly working themselves up. When they saw Oh at the mailbox, they set upon him. Oh was able to break free and run. It was Alfonso Borum who ran Oh down, striking him in the head with a bottle. When the South Korean student fell to the ground, Borum proceeded to kick the University of Pennsylvania student repeatedly. The others with him followed suit, kicking Oh until he was unconscious. Borum then rifled his pockets and found an empty wallet. The boys then ran. Oh died as a result of the beating, and the public put pressure on Philadelphia's mayor, Richardson Dilworth, who, overcome with both grief and shame, reportedly wept at the funeral of In Ho-oh. The South Korean ambassador, Dr. Yu Chan-yang, publicly expressed his shock and disappointment at the murder of one of his country's nationals, in a city that, by his account, was one of the outstanding cultural cities in the United States. The ceasefire to the Korean War was just 5 years before, with South Korea being an important ally with the United States during the Cold War. Thus, the local Philadelphia gang-related murder was gaining unwanted national attention on the world stage and a source of anti-American propaganda by America's Cold War opponents. Fingers were being pointed, and blame for the murder was shared all around. Charges were brought before the Philadelphia City Council Committee that the police department had been short by 165 officers of the quota provided by council appropriations, the shortage of officers allegedly being a major factor in why youth crime was on the rise in Philadelphia, according to the papers. In response, Philadelphia's police commissioner, Thomas Gibbons, described as the incorruptible for his fight against the mafia, initiated a citywide roundup, mass arrests of repeat offenders with a reported number of 2,000 arrests. This following the arrest of the 11 accused of In Ho-oh's murder. Public outrage at the murder was so intense that the defense requested a change of venue, citing inflammatory public opinion in the Philadelphia press. However, the defiant behavior of the accused, combined with the national outrage covered in the press, made such a change seem useless. The defendant's case was not helped when one of the boys, a 16-year-old who had originally agreed to become a material witness in exchange for a lighter sentence, by the name of Harry McLeod, briefly escaped after being placed in the same room with hardened, older adult criminals. With them, McLeod had broken out of the holding cell, but was later picked up, along with the other escapees. Judge Louis E. Leventhal had decided that whether the case would be tried in Philadelphia or elsewhere, the impartiality or bias of any jury during the summer of 1958 would be the same, as the case had received national coverage. The trial would be held in Philadelphia. It was the reaching out by O's own family, both in the U.S. and in South Korea, that offered either a glimpse of hope or misplaced idealism, depending on one's point of view. Citing their own Christian beliefs as well as what they had read about in their country's newspapers in regards to racial segregation in the U.S., the O family petitioned the Philadelphia court and the American ambassador to South Korea that mercy be shown to the boys arrested, with funds gathered by the O family be placed in a trust to be used for the, quote, religious, educational, vocational, and social guidance of the boys when they are released. Their calls for mercy and forgiveness had the unintended effect of exacerbating heated debates over coddling of street gangs, an issue which had been debated just a year before, when the murder of handicapped 15-year-old Michael Farmer, committed by the Egyptian Kings and Dragons street gangs over in New York, sparked national notoriety and outrage. Philadelphia County Court's Judge Keller Gilbert angrily berated the pleading for the poor misguided defendants, as well as the implied vilifying of judges who were acting in the public safety when sentencing gang members who were found guilty of having committed violent crimes. The O family's idealism, or dedication to their beliefs, in the face of the loss of a beloved family member, would have to take a back seat to the public and official outrage over growing inner-city youth crime. The boys who were convicted of O's murder ranged in ages from 15 to 19. Out of all of them, however, it was 19-year-old Alfonso Boram who undoubtedly received the harshest sentence. Going by the eyewitness testimony of one of the participants, 18-year-old Edward McLeod, perhaps understandably so. Boram, known as Flip Boram in his neighborhood, had a long police record that included burglary and assault. As previously mentioned, he was the one who beat O with a bottle, knocking him down before repeatedly kicking O, and act that his friends joined in. Boram sat and listened coolly, no signs of emotion to be seen on his face, as the jury delivered its verdict of guilty. While Boram's mother, Ruth, wept, Judge Joseph Sloan handed down his sentence. It would be the death penalty for 19-year-old Alfonso Flip Boram. As for the fate of his younger friends who had participated in the beating, 17-year-old Franklin Marshall would serve 10 to 20, while 16-year-old Leonard Johnson would be handed a life sentence. 16-year-olds Douglas MacArthur Clark and the recaptured escapee Harry McLeod, 17-year-olds James Wright, Robert Williams, Percy Johnson, and Lonnie Collins, as well as 18-year-olds Harold Johnson and the previously mentioned Edward McLeod, who had turned state's witness against his friends, would receive long prison terms. The attention on Philadelphia's teenage street gangs in the wake of the In Ho Oh murder at the University of Pennsylvania, literally a 15-minute walk away from WFIL, was potentially bad for business for Dick Clark and his carefully crafted teenage fans of rock and roll as good teenagers image that he was trying to sell. But, like all good businessmen, he simply pushed through. He even suggested stories in the various popular teenage magazines of how his clean-cut and family-oriented teen idols had resisted the temptations of street gang life in order to espouse wholesome, family-friendly, all-American values. By 1959, with the harder-edged and rebellious rock and roll singers out of the picture, and Alan Freed's career in ruins, Dick Clark's American Bandstand, with its brand of wholesome, clean-cut, lip-syncing, pop teen idols making the cute, well-dressed, and well-behaved teen dancers swoon and sway daily on national TV, now ruled the lucrative youth market.